Dance, dance, dance on the grave of ESG. As a second massive investment company, Vanguard is now pulling out and reducing its investment in ESG-related funds. Now, this company manages another $8.2 trillion, trillion with a T. God damn. See, again, this is why ESG was so very popular with all of the companies. This is why entertainment went woke, why gaming, why media, whilst movies and television went woke. Because this is the kind of money floating around in response to it. It's hardly difficult to understand, really. It was never truly about the politics, it was about tremendous quantities of free cash. But now, it is beginning to dry up rather rapidly. We already talked about how BlackRock was pulling out of ESG and no longer wanted to use the term. Well, now they've also backed that up with actual action. No longer are they merely going, okay, we're not going to say it anymore, but we're still going to do it. In fact, now, they're not doing it either. So, Vanguard supported just 2% of shareholder resolutions on environmental and social issues at US companies this year, down from 12% last year. So last year, they accepted 12% of the ESG-related investment or cases, shall we say. So basically they get various pitches like, hey, do you want to put money into this, etc, etc. And a lot of those were ESG related. Last year they backed 12% of them, and this is out of hundreds of proposals. So that is dozens upon dozens of proposals being funded to the tunes of millions and billions of dollars. And now only 2%, despite a higher number of cases, 359 compared to 290, have actually been given money. This is also with BlackRock having funded 7% compared to 22% last year. So these are enormous cuts in investment to ESG-related funds. This also comes hot on the heels of Vanguard getting out of the Net Zero Asset Management Initiative. This was essentially a shell company for the ESG, implementing most of its rules and regulations and ideological motivations, but in a slightly more industrial-friendly package, shall we say, in that they were pitching it as an energy management kind of firm for companies that wanted to get into the power production business, which was, of course, enormous money during the whole energy crises of yesteryears. They then give a lengthy spiel about how they totally do still care about all of this, and it's very, very valuable, and climate change is real, and then goes, but actually, we're not going to be a member of this anymore. Because the entire thing is, the ESG people themselves know what is happening here. The author, Paul Washington, is executive director of the ESG Center at the conference board. So this is one of the guys within ESG who earns money off ESG and pushes it due to its political ideology. Even they know that shit is hitting the fan. They see companies not being interested in investing in it. They see companies actively shying away from the mention of ESG as a brand in essence. And they're now trying to redefine themselves. A focus on strategy. A majority of companies, 63%, say they're increasing their focus on the business case for ESG and how it connects with shareholder values. In other words, instead of arguing for the politics or the morality of it, they're trying to pivot this towards how it can finally earn money. Now, one of the problems with that argument is that they've been trying to do this for a lot of time now, and it hasn't done anything. The entire point of ESG from an investor standpoint was supposed to be, okay, we've got global boiling now, guys, and unless you do something, your business is just going to go up in smoke or be drowned or something by a tsunami. So that's why you're gonna have to do this. But well, it hasn't really happened. That's the issue. We've already had now major disasters like Corona, for example, and the war in Ukraine with all of its economical consequences, and yet very little of it has had to do with the climate. In fact, they tend to go away when a bigger crisis like Corona or the Ukraine war comes along. They're also talking about refining language. This is of course a favoured trick of the left, which they attend to whenever they're in a little bit of trouble, when they realise that something they're pushing has gone too far and has become commonly identifiable by the masses as what it is actually is, like woke for example. They begin looking at it and going, oh shit, we're gonna have to abandon this now and try to come up with something else. Investors may well see companies change the way they talk about ESG. Nearly half the companies surveyed are now talking less about ESG and more about sustainability, corporate responsibility, or responsible growth. So that is half the companies realizing that ESG is a toxic term that is now being recognized by the consumers as a bad thing, and they're trying to do the little word games, going, well, it's not ESG, it's about sustainability, you see. It's about corporate responsibility, because that, tragically, is still a term that goes over very well with normies. Again and again in various polls, we see that normal people keep saying they want companies to take greater social responsibility, which is retarded, because their entire job is to earn money regardless of their impact on society. In fact, it has universally been society that has forced niceties upon companies. If the company was still able to do so, it would pump toxic sludge straight into the river because it's the cheapest alternative. And we know this because in every company where there aren't express regulations against this, they still do it. See China, for example, and their coal power plants. That shift can make sense, especially as ESG is a term that was developed with investors in mind and may not resonate as well with other key audiences for companies, including customers, employees, and the broader public. And there you have it. The wider audience, if you will say, know what ESG means. They know it is a political tool that is infecting companies, and they know it is responsible for absolute garbage. At the same time, 27% of companies are reducing their level of external communication about ESG. That one is crucial. So the 50% here, they are still pushing the ESG agenda, they are merely calling it something else. But 27% are actively scaling back their commitment and sales pointing of ESG. So whereas where they might otherwise go, okay, no, this is sustainable, you see, that's why you should give us your money, they now go, actually, never mind that. We've got a different argument. That is the key thing, because that means the company's actually disengaging from it actively. And if they're not making the argument for investing in ESG, then, surprise, surprise, the companies aren't going to invest in ESG. Now, this was pretty much already on the horizon when we talked about BlackRock distancing themselves from the term, because I get it. A lot of people are very skeptical about this, and they're looking at it and simply say, well, they're still doing it, they're just not talking about it anymore. And that is true for the short term, because that is always how it's going to be. The companies can't simply just turn about and completely do the opposite thing, both because they have internal structures that would oppose it, they simply can't pivot that quickly, and because that would seem like instability, and the markets ever hates instability. They are going to need to very slowly and carefully pivot away from ESG, which they have invested a lot of time and public profile into, and then turn to something else. This is the slow death of ESG, and hell, I say slow. Cutting your investment by 10% from, 12%, no, not even 10%, is a lot more than that in reality, as cutting your investment from 12% of accepted things to 2% means that an enormous quantity of resources have been actively shifted away from ESG. In other words, the money pot, the total amount of wealth that is available via ESG funds, has sunk dramatically. It has been, far more than halved. It's been cut down to a fraction of what it was. It is now a tiny amount compared to previous years. And this, of course, will then filter back to the companies that have made a living essentially of applying to ESG funds. As I've talked about it again and again, the reason why so many companies went woke was because it was simply easier to earn money via investors rather than selling a product. Because the investment money, was easier to get at. It's hard making good entertainment. You need passionate people, you need engaged professionals, you need good actors, you need good scripts, you need good writers. Whereas making money from investment, well, all you need to do is pitch them in a meeting, and anything that happens thereafter is, well, pointless. They're not investing because of the product. They're investing because they told you what the product would be. Like, oh, our TV series is going to be diverse. In fact, in Ahsoka, we're not even going to have a speaking role for a male character, practically. And people will go, oh, that's very progressive. Here, have my millions. And then when the show comes out and flops, well, it was expected. Nobody thought it would do well because the point was never to sell tickets. The point was never to put bums in seats. The point was to turn over the money straight up. But with this, we can now safely say that the companies are backing up their words. Not to, paint them in too positive a light. This is still just good old-fashioned capitalism at work here, as it should, where a company goes, well, this earns money, I'm gonna do that, and well, this doesn't, I'm not gonna do that. It is the result of not really voting with your wallet per se, but voting with your voice, with making enough noise about it, with giving ESG enough of a negative connotation to the point where the mere mention of it is considered death to one's proposal. And as that becomes more and more commonplace, we will see the entirety of it simply just disappear, along slowly but surely with its lesser versions, sustainability, etc. It's happening, dudes. Unironically, it is. It will still take years. As I say every time, these ships turn very slowly, but this is an enormous drop in interest in ESG. And the companies that produce our entertainment, our video games, our television shows, will be getting the message. I guarantee you that. So when the money dries up, the interest dries up. Until next time, I've been Arch. Thank you all very much for watching, and I do hope to see you all again soon. Till then, have a good day.